Hi, I'm Debbie Moraes, and this is Legal Matters, the program that's been designed to address the critical, sometimes contentious matters that face consumers and businesses today. It's legal information, practical solutions, and straight talk about a wide variety of topics. And today, a pretty contentious and certainly timely topic, things about bullying, cyberbullying, suicide, and some of the punishments. I guess the question ends up being, who's responsible and what's legal and what's right? So we have our legal eagles, Jackie Grasso and David Bazar from Odette Bazar, Cadero, Grasso Law Firm in East Providence. Welcome and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I guess there's enough to say there's plenty ripped from the headlines. Legal debate swirls over charges in a student's suicide. Rape charge dropped after a teen accuser's suicide when the witness can't testify anymore. The playground's getting rough. It's a terrible situation, whether it's cyberbullying or bullying. What's law and what's just not right? Where do you want to start?
Well, first of all, let's just start with technology and the law have always been an issue because the law sometimes has a hard time keeping up as technology changes. But I think what happens is eventually the law gets adapted to deal with new technologies as they come online and things change. And Jackie will tell you that recently Rhode Island has changed its bullying laws to take that into account.
Yeah, Rhode Island has, I think it was 2 years ago, they included in the definition of bullying electronics. So it would be internet, cell phones, websites, so any media type anything that's media related would be included in.
And what happens is that
cyberbullying, basically.
It changes so fast too, because at first, you know, maybe it was emails and then text messaging, and now the social networking and all of that keeps changing to some degree what we're talking about. But in essence, it really is all just other forms of communication. So, you know, it's really moving from harassing someone face-to-face to the telephone, you know, and the hanging up calls that people used to complain about. Remember when we first started practicing law, the complaints were he's calling me on the phone and hanging up, or she's calling me on the phone and harassing me. And how do you adapt that technology to the law? And now we're just adapting new technologies.
For instance, the internet, people would be bullying over Facebook, MySpace, any of the social media sites. Some people have actually created websites that actually meet the definition of bullying. So there are many forms of it, and so electronic is basically a very generic term when we're talking about what can happen over the internet.
If we back up just for a moment and say, harassment, is that illegal or just not nice? Is harassment illegal?
It depends, I would suppose, on what level it rises to.
Physical threat, not good. Is it illegal?
Sure it is.
Sure it is. I mean, a threat to commit a crime is a crime, you know.
Emotional, that's a little subjective. Is that illegal or just not nice?
It is subjective. It's more difficult to prove in a court of law. However, you do have evidence of what the emotional abuse is, what was said, what was on the internet. The problem with the internet is everything is recorded, so it's there in black and white versus it's your word against mine.
Yeah, and it depends what was done, what was said, how it was said, the person who's receiving the information, how consistent or constant it is, and what the likely result of what someone might do with that information. You know, if you call somebody fat, is that a crime? Probably not.
It's not nice.
It's not nice. What happens, though, if you create a website where you have all this information about a person and all derogatory things being said and posted, and a lot of people come to that website and post information. Now have you gone past that not nice to you're illegally harassing someone? I think you probably have.
Instant messaging as well.
Are they trying to actually craft what the parameters are? Where do you actually cross the line? First Amendment, we've talked about that countless times. I have a right to say, you're a bad person. How much of a right do I have to say with my First Amendment rights versus your rights too? You have rights too.
I think what a reasonable person would determine as harassment, and if it's repetitive, it's consistent, if it's used to upset a person, then I think it would fall in the level of harassment.
Right. A one-time communication of something like that, it's not going to rise to a level of harassment. But a consistent, repetitive harassment is, and that's exactly what I was trying to get at before, is it's not so much what you're saying in that instance, but what you're doing with that information. And you can call somebody up by accident and hang up, the old technology.
It would happen,
It's
sure.
a mistake. But if you're consistently calling someone up and hanging up, that's not a First Amendment right to use the phone. It's harassment.
Now, considering there are so many cases about children being harassed in the schoolyard, being bullied, we were children once. I'm sure that your parents once said, kids will be kids, bullying happens, kids can be aggressive, it's all part of growing up, it makes them stronger. That's right and reasonable. Children do need to learn how to protect themselves. But with what's been happening, now parents are involved, now lawyers are involved, now litigation's involved. Who's responsible when this seems to be reaching a situation where kids are committing suicide or taking pills because they're depressed? And
well, first you have to look at every state has its own laws regarding school safety. So every school has to adopt a policy in terms of student safety. And part of that policy does cover the bullying and the cyberbullying. In Rhode Island, if you look at the statute, it will give you a definition of bullying. It will give you a definition of harassment. So going back to that, if the school implements the policy and they allow someone to continue to get bullying, assuming they have knowledge of it, then the school could be liable.
There's a second issue that comes in. It's where is it taking place? Is it a school issue or not a school issue? Is it cyberbullying taking place from home over the internet? And sometimes parents bring that to the school because it affects a student at the school, and schools oftentimes will try to get involved in those situations, and sometimes they're told, wait, this isn't your issue, it's not your deal, you can't get involved. So I think one of the things Jackie was saying is that schools should create a written policy and make it part of a student handbook so that students are bound by that conduct, whether it happens exactly at school or not. If it's affecting someone at the school, then by contract they'd have a right to get involved.
So I think that you bring up a good point about the schools having that responsibility, yet in some recent cases, once one child was harassed to the point of committing suicide, the superintendent, no, it was the principal of the school, excuse me, who said, hear ye, all parents, you must be responsible for your children and what they're doing with their cell phones, what they're sexting, texting, streaming, and you must be accountable. However, in that same situation, the school is now being held accountable, though the child was using his texting Saturday night when he wasn't on the school property, and yet the school is still liable. What's the statute? What's going on in Rhode Island and Mass as far as that goes these days?
I think what David said is correct. If it carries over into the school, so for instance, if somebody's sitting in school and they're texting or instant messaging somebody, harassing messages, well then I think you can make a connection with the school because it's happening on their premises. If it's off premises, well then I would ask, is the other individuals being affected, are they both in the same school system? Is it carried over off the school premises? Is it happening at lunchtime? I mean, it's really...
And then think about it in terms of the law. What legal theory is a lawyer going to sue the school on? Is it negligence? And if you're suing the school on negligence, then what you have to do is look at the facts and say, did the school have a duty to the child? Perhaps it did. Did they breach the duty? Well, that then comes down to, did they do what was reasonable? Was there some reasonable steps the school could have taken to prevent what happened? And if the answer to that is no, they did everything that's reasonable, then there's really no claim against the school. Not to say one wouldn't be brought, but probably not successful. If they could have done something and didn't do it, then there is a viable claim.
And with parents who have children who texted, sexted, or who were harassing a child, the parents are supposed to be responsible for the child?
Of course, the parent's going to be responsible for the activities of the child. The child is under a minor, but even in some cases, if they're older.
Again, then that's going to be a difficult situation.
And you know where we're going.
Well, if you sue the parent for negligence of a child, there's a statute in Rhode Island that limits the liability to a very low number. If the parent was actively negligent themselves or involved on their own behalf, and you can sue the parent for doing something wrong, then there's some liability on the parent's part.
And let's continue.